Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of the Broadcast, where we give you bite-sized bits of best practices, all designed to help you be a better leader and a more effective communicator. I'm your host, Gerard Braud. Earlier this week, we posed this question to the social media community. Our question was, is it true that you should never get in a fight with someone who buys ink by a barrel? It's an old expression, but one that I continue to hear from people who are in leadership positions in organizations all the time. I tend to be a bit aggressive in my media relations and crisis communications. And I'll tell you up front, I'm willing to get into that fight. But here are some of the thoughts from your professional colleagues around the world. Jay says that it is never worth it. He says journalists always get the last word, and if you do win, then you're going to get silence from those journalists. Brent says it depends on what you're fighting for. Brent says, generally speaking, it's a bad idea, and he says his goal is to use those barrels of ink to his advantage. Thomas says that expression is not true. Sometimes he says you have no choice and that you can have the fight successfully. He says it's not ideal, however, but he says avoid the fight if possible. I agree with you on that. Gina says times are changing. Everyone has a voice, not just the journalist, and she says journalists are increasingly limited in the amount of space they have because advertising revenues are going down. Cody says in today's world, it's okay to get in a fight with someone who buys ink by the barrel. He says 10 years ago, that was the only medium. He says now social media is changing the game and newspapers are behind the times. And Bill says, these days, it's more like don't get in a fight with someone who has 20,000 power followers on social media. In my own practice, I get in fights if necessary, and I win the fights whenever I get in the fight. I will not only demand retractions if there are errors made, I demand that the retraction go in the same spot in the newspaper where the error was made. So if it's a front page mistake, it's a front page retraction, and nothing keeps us from getting that. The other thing is I will demand an apology in a letter to the editor and get it. I will negotiate and demand that our organization, whoever I'm representing, gets to write a letter to the editor and have it published. I will also negotiate, if it's a big enough problem, that we get to select a third-party expert to weigh in and also have a letter to the editor. And I always make sure that we're able to go in with enough money to buy a full-page ad that says, their errors were this, the truth is this. That is a serious fight. In many cases, the newspaper will beg us not to buy the ad, and they will concede to the retractions in the same place. They will concede to the letters to the editor by them, by us, and by a third-party expert. And one of these folks mentioned, well, we don't want the media to go silent. You know what happens? That media goes silent on you in as much as they're never going to chase you down for something that might be erroneous on their part. No journalist, and I was a journalist for 15 years, no journalist wants to get caught making a mistake. But many journalists play loose with the facts. And if a journalist plays loose with the facts, and if a journalist makes an error, you have a right to stand up. Now, many people here in today's responses have said you can use social media to your advantage. I think that is more dangerous than trying to win it with a newspaper. But what you do have, and you've had it since the 1990s, is an unlimited access to internet space, to blog space, to your website, so that you can write for good search engine optimization. The media sites are bigger than your corporate sites and will generally have greater pull on social media, a greater pull on search engine optimization. but you have to do your best to use the right keywords and to match their keywords word for word so that you can control the flow of accurate information. Ultimately, it's not about getting in a fight. Ultimately, it's about the truth be told. And if someone has said something about your organization that isn't true, you're an absolute fool if you leave it up in their newspaper and on their website, because that lie, that untruth, stays there forever. And that, in my opinion, is never a good idea. So, that's what I think about this issue. I appreciate all of you weighing in with your thoughts. Next week on the broadcast, we'll be back with another question. For the broadcast, I'm Gerard Braud.